this is the EcoTails client project, and we've had a chance to introduce the project, so we're kind of familiar with it. Um, the project itself is called Journey to a Better Tomorrow. It's a transmedia production project. Okay, so that's the overall. So Journey to a Better Tomorrow is the name actually, officially, for the project. The client can change the name, but it's the name that we have proposed to the client, and he hasn't changed it yet. So we'll use that. EcoTails was a working placeholder, which is the name really to the company of the client. But I'll explain a bit more about the client so that you understand. The client is a trust. The trust is local, Kenyan. It's a Hindu trust. Hindus own the trust. So I think the Hindu community are members of the trust that's commissioning this work. And they contribute to this trust, and it has an objective of doing, we could say, good work to improve the community. That's the objective overall, from my understanding. I mean, they may have other religious or spiritual or even social objectives, which I'm not aware of. But the objective that this initiative is under is projects that improve the outcomes of livelihoods within the communities that they do. That is the segment they're under. So EcoTails was a code name I just created for them to work with for the purpose of producing what we have to produce. The client is not a subject specialist. In other words, they're not understanding what a transmedia project is. And I'll explain what it is for our purpose. But they don't also understand any of the content creation artifacts or products that we produce. They don't know about that. But they all are professionals in their field. They're well educated in that sense, experienced also in that sense. So you find some of them are managing directors, some of them are CEOs, some of them are, you could say, marketing specialists. They all have their fields, and they're not all based in Kenya because of traveling, and also people are relocated, but it's still part of the trust. So they have exposure and they have education, and they also are educated. So they understand, you can say, scientific reasoning, for example. They understand that. And that gives us a touch point with them, because we also have the same sort of education background in that sense. We're also professionals in our field. So from that perspective, we can understand where they're coming from, and they can understand us. But they have a need, and their need is to produce, this is using their language, but we'll go into it in detail. Their need is to produce a awareness to educate Generation Z, or let's say the community, on the problem of waste disposal. That's littering. They conceive it to be a problem, and they say, okay, so how can we educate people that it is a problem within the cities of Kenya? Okay? The second part, that's part one. Second part, as we discussed, is to create agency amongst the people they're educating to, let's say, reduce littering. Okay? Agency simply means to motivate people to stop the littering process, so that they know the problem, and then they actively prevent it from happening amongst themselves. So those are the two goals that they have. Now, if we achieve these goals, we'll have met their objective, and they are willing to fund the projects that we're working on based on that. Now, beyond that, they have not briefed us on anything beyond that. You see, they have their ideas, but their ideas are just their ideas. It's not necessarily, they're not necessarily going to use them, because they may not necessarily work. So this meeting is a planning meeting, and we'll be having a series of them from now up to the end of this project. And I'll explain about the cycles, the scheduling, and things like those, just to reaffirm. And we will be meeting to discuss how we're going to implement the project that they want through us. Okay, so the client is ready to go, and I'll explain about that when it comes to the section that I have put here for, you could say, budgeting, but I really don't have budgeting in this meeting, but I'll bring it up when we're doing costing. Okay, I've called this meeting the coordinating of the transmedia content production strategy. It's essentially a planning meeting. This is, and when we meet as this group, we may add on one or two other people, but when we meet as this group, we're essentially planning. It's a planning group. And I'll explain how it works, and I'll explain why, and then I'll go on to explain the strategy in terms of production. So this is not a production meeting. It's not even, you could say it's a production planning meeting, but it's not even that. This is really looking at, particularly, at the planning for the entire, you could say, project. We're looking at that. So it's really a project planning meeting, and part of the project involves production, and I'll explain the different segments so that we have clarity on that. So we're part of a meeting that is overarching. It's planning everything. I'll also explain why I'm doing it this way so that you understand where I'm coming from. Okay, so I hope, yeah, I can see I'm being prompted by Google, but I'll ignore that. If you cannot hear me, let me know. If there's any problem with the communication, also let me know. But this is now where we are, and I'd like to now get on with the meeting and go through it step by step so that you understand exactly what it is. So the goal of this meeting is to coordinate, actually, the planning of the project. That's what this is, to coordinate the planning of the project. And before I get into it, I just want to explain why we're doing things the way we are and how we need to think. I think, in my view, it's also in my view, it's not necessarily how we have to do it, but in my view, why we have to think the way we have to in order to succeed, not only this year, but in the next 2-3 years going forward. The main issue is that, and we all know this, is that anything that's computerized today, anything that is, you can say, process driven by computers today, is being influenced and changed by artificial intelligence. We know that. So that change is happening in ways that, and this is the crux, by the way, it's happening in ways that people with the resources, institutions with the money, are willing to fund the activities around artificial intelligence. That's what really is the issue. That's the devil in the detail, because if it were that artificial intelligence had these great capabilities and it's coming on the scene and it's all, transformative, it wouldn't mean anything if we were not prepared to put resources behind it. Yeah, because what it would mean is that now we have this great technology, it has great offerings, potential, and everything, but it's nice as an idea. We're not going to implement it. Why? Because nobody's going to put resources behind it. But now, governments are putting resources behind it. And when I say that, it means countries are taking their resources and putting them behind artificial intelligence. That's the devil in the room. So, because they're doing that, it means several things. And I'm talking also from an African perspective so that it's not just a generalized meeting. Once the government decides that they're putting resources behind, let's say, AI in its implementation, then it affects everything, because the private sector orientates itself to the policy and the direction that the government takes. In other words, the private sector in African countries, like in Kenya, the private sector doesn't have an appetite for doing things that the government is not doing. The private sector is willing to, like investors, they're willing to put money behind activities that fit into government policy, fit into the laws of Kenya, into, you can say, the bylaws that exist. Even our client has told me this, but it's not because our client is telling me this, it's just the way it is. The client has reminded me that we should, in our storytelling, not do anything that does not align with government policy or the law of Kenya. They told me that. You see, so they didn't need to tell me, but they have told me, and it's just a reminder that, you see, the private sector itself orientates itself to the laws of the country. So we're a country of laws. And the moment we say, okay, the government says, we're going to now put resources behind this kind of thing, then that's going to happen. Now, the government hasn't said that. The Kenya government hasn't said that. But the Kenya government is easy to predict. Once, let's say, the G8 countries and now they're having the big economic forum, say that they're going to do it, then African countries follow suit, and one of the first countries to follow suit in Africa is Kenya. Kenya will run in the direction of the G8. So we don't have to wait for them. We don't need to. We know they will do it. So we need to be ready to hit the ground running when that happens. So why should it change anything? Why should it affect us? Well, this is the thing. As long as you're doing anything computerized, then AI is going to change it. But how? Well, anything computerized that we do predicates on software. Now, the software that we use, all of it is changing. So the Microsoft CEO on the 1st of January of 2025, 1st of this month, announced that all Microsoft software is redundant. That sounds like a techie. In fact, if you hear that speech, it sounds very technical. I can share it with you, but if you hear it, it sounds very technical. You may not, it may go under the radar. In fact, I'm sure it went under the radar of most people, but not the developers. Because what he told the developers is that if you're a software developer, if you're a software engineer, you're redundant. We don't need you anymore. We're stopping that line of work. That's what he told them. So that shook software development across the world. Why? Because it's the Microsoft CEO. Microsoft's the biggest software developing country on earth. They're the biggest still, even now. So when the CEO of Microsoft says that, it's significant. Now, all these other people in the industry, the stakeholders and everyone else, are saying the same thing because they've analyzed what he was saying. But he was speaking technical. But they're analyzing what he was saying, and they're now interpreting it. And it depends on the people you listen to. But if you listen to them, some of them will say the end of software development, the end of software engineering, the end of software. They talk about it like you're dead. That's where your career path is, you're completely dead in the water. Some talk like this. But another way of spinning it off is that there's an opportunity, and then you can ask the question, where's the opportunity? And that's why we're having our meeting, and that's part of the reason why I'd like us to move in a direction that speaks to the opportunity. The opportunity lies in the alternative. So Microsoft is the #1 software company in the world. Now, if they say software is dead, they're dead, unless they can see a way out. But they've invested. They're also the biggest investors in artificial intelligence. So what's replacing software? In his speech, the CEO said that agentic agents, or he was calling them agenic agents. I think these two words are alternatives to the same thing. So agenic agents or agentic agents, whichever word you like, is replacing software. So what's that about? I mean, what's the big story there? Well, you can see software as processes that are automated, let's say pre-automated, and all you have to do is evoke them. So you click a button, then it runs some automated process. So if you wanted to use Photoshop to enhance an image, let's say by using levels, and you wanted to set high points and low points, yeah, you go there, you drag, you click, and it'll set a low point across the whole image, and it looks a certain way. You want to set high points, you click to select, then you drag, and then you apply. It does that. You see, those are presets, but they're customized presets. So you can go in there and alter them. They have little buttons. You can go in there and do anything. And we know Photoshop, so we can do that to so many different things and change the image. But essentially, the human component there is to manually set the image. Let's say we wanted to set low points because we wanted to create a kind of, dark, spooky mood in the picture. Maybe that's what we wanted to do. So we go in there and we play around with the slider, so it comes to that. We set the low point that way, and then when we apply it, it now applies it to the image, and we get this dark, spooky mood out of an ordinary shot. That's what we wanted to do. Now, the generation of the effect is automated. You see, the Photoshop has an algorithm that automates that effect. Now, we can apply a series of effects by masking, for example, and then applying different things. We can we can have a series of effects, and then the mood is enhanced. Effectively, that process, we can say, is the creating of this mood using Photoshop processes, and we use the software to achieve that. Okay? Now, that's something we think, we imagine, and then we look, we do it iteratively till it comes the way we want. And we've been used to that for very many years. And all software works like that. Now, what's replacing that is an agentic agent. So instead of the human being going in there and making that adjustment, the way we've said, the human would now ask the software to give me what I want. So if I want this, let's say, dark, spooky mood based on this image, and it should look like the 1950s in terms of look and feel, and it should be filmic or cinematic, this is the feeling I want. If I say all that, then the agentic agent is intelligent enough to interpret that and suggest a series of, you can say, adjustments to the software, so adjustments to Photoshop, that it can apply to achieve that. And when it does it, if you don't like it, you can say, well, it's good, but I think the details are a bit low resolution, make it higher, maybe add a few people in this dark area. I need to see more detail in the darkness, maybe add some more blue highlights so that it comes out with some cinematic feeling that I want. But I can say all that. And then the agentic agent will now give me a re-render of what I've just said. That's the new thing. Now, why is it a game changer? Well, first of all, you know, from a creative perspective, it makes us interact with the idea much more intuitively in that sense. Because now you're talking it out and thinking and going in at the speed of thought, and it's producing all these things. It's not so technically driven. Now I can play around in my mind and watch and play around more and then watch. So in that sense, I can work and achieve a creative result quickly compared to the old system. So that already would make it a tool I would use. That's one. Two is that from the client's perspective, ideas are coming thick and fast. Not that it's a good thing, by the way. You know, ideas coming thick and fast to a client can confuse them. But it just means that if a client comes and says, you know, we approved this scene, but we don't like it. Can we go back to what we had before? In fact, and then add on a component of what this guy was saying and what that guy was saying. So let's just consider that, and we don't like the direction we're going. If they said that in yesterday's world, it was, no, you approved it, we can't do it without extra cost. But now, if you're saying we make a change, and that's the description of your change, we'll tell the agentic agent to re-render everything, keep it as it is, make these changes only. And it'll do that. So we can come back tomorrow, not like a week from now, 2 weeks from now. Just, we can even come back in 10 minutes, the rendering time. Can come back in 10 minutes with the re-rendered scene, animated fully. And the client made a serious change, which in the old method would have taken weeks to have done. You see, that changes things. It changes things because this cost that we charge the client is time-based. So if suddenly the time frames are reduced to almost minutes, from weeks to minutes, it changes things. So it's so significant. Now, we may not feel it now at this instant. Why? Because everybody is scuffling in the background, trying to reorganize themselves, trying to re-strategize. The people who are biggest, most affected are the ones with the biggest skin in the game. Companies like Adobe, Autodesk, Blender, all these software companies, those ones have the biggest skin in the game. They're completely thrown off by what's happening, especially if they've not seriously, taken on AI in their system. And when I say take on AI, I don't mean using it instrumentally per se. I mean, because someone can say, okay, I'm using AI. No, that's not what we're saying. We could also just argue in our pipeline, why don't we just use AI? No, that's not the thing. This is a game changer because the question that's being asked is not whether you're using AI or not. The question is this. Are you able to produce, like now, we have to produce episode 1 of this Transmedia project. I'll explain the Transmedia component. Can you produce episode 1, let's say, of the animation within 3 months? 13 minutes animation. The correct answer is no. In the old system, we'd need at least 6 months, and that would depend very much on the client cooperation. To what extent is the client disciplined and not making changes as we go, and cooperating with us as we go? To what extent is the industry also, the people we have in the industry, Kenya, Nairobi, that we're working with, capable of working with us to finish within the 3 months? You see, 6 months is more realistic, and that's when everything, all the ducks are aligned in a row. You see? However, using the new method, hygienic agents, and it's not so much about them. It's more about using a method where we can creatively not only produce, let's say, mood boards, treatments, storyboards, animatics, not only can, and even character designs, not only can we create all these things within, let me call it record time. Not only can we do that, but the changes made on them can be done in record time, and not only that, but also the late changes, the changes that you're making when we have already gone through ideation, pre-production, production, when post-production, and you're making a change to the idea at the beginning, which changes the story, which changes the characters, which changes the plot. You're making changes like those. At the end, even those we can now accommodate and rerun the whole thing and incorporate that change. That's what we're saying. So much has changed. That's what I'm trying to tell you. It's so transformative that nobody's going to talk to you about AI. They're just going to talk to you about time, quantity, quality. And when I say quality, it's not resolution, it's story. They'll be saying this story, according to the client, is meeting the quality that I want. Okay, so that's the thing. That's the game changer. That's why AI is in the game. It's because they're affecting time, space, content. They're affecting us in that fundamental way. All right. Now, not everybody sees it. No one sees it. They're only going to see it when the chips are down, people are, and the resources are being distributed. People are in play for those resources, and some people are able to make that case, and they get the resources. That's the funding, and some people just can't. That's when the differences will start to. That's when you start separating the men from the boys. Yeah. So who's getting the funding? Well, these guys are getting the funding. How often? Every 3 months. Why? Because they're producing stuff every 3 months. What are they producing? Well, look at this. You see. So, if you understand it, then we have to start thinking different, is what I'm saying. We have to start thinking different if we're going to be in the game. It's all changed. Now, there are many conspiracies. There are also many claims. So that's, you see, this AI space has come with fake news. It's come with, these conspiracies and claims which are noisy. They're noisy because they're not, some of them are interesting, but they're not helpful. Some of them are fantastic, but they're impossible. Others are completely reckless because they distract us from the real story, from the real deal. They take us in the wrong direction. For example, if you anthropomorphize AI, start saying this AI is going to take our jobs. No, AI is not taking your job. It's almost like you're saying some alien which has manifested itself as a human being is coming after you now and it's going after your job. So if you want to know things are thick, just know this alien type being is coming after your job. That's just Hollywood anthropomorphosis. The AI is not trying to do anything like that. Nothing. That's a distraction. See. What really is the challenge is that the same old client, who is now in our case, this trust, is coming and making a simple statement, and they've already made it to me. They've said to me, listen, Chief, we're good to go. We're ready to start. In fact, they've told me start. But for us, and this is how they talk, we don't know what you've talked about. We don't know. Everything I talk to them about sounds technical, so they don't know what I'm talking about. So they tell me, can you show us something, like 1 minute of this 13-minute episode, so that we can appreciate it? You see. That's what they're saying. So what they're saying is, before we pay you, can you give us a 1-minute animation? That's a lot of work. That's a lot of work before getting paid. And they're saying, produce the animation, don't produce all these things you're talking about, like character design, storyboards, animatic, and saying no. Okay, they're not saying don't do it. They don't even know what I'm saying. But they're saying, okay, if you do it, we'll check it out. But that doesn't guarantee us that they'll say, okay. From experience, most clients don't even understand a storyboard at all. In fact, I would say 96% of clients would not understand a storyboard. A storyboard's a technical document. But 80% of them would understand, would it be 80? Maybe 64, around 64% would understand a animatic. The remainder would think that's the final production, the animatic. But you can always tell them it's not. But they will be confused enough to start thinking that the final production will look like this. You see? So a good number of them don't understand. So they want you to be fairly far down the road enough for them to understand what you're going to do in the end. That's what you. It's almost like you want to buy a pair of shoes. Someone says, "Show me the pair of shoes that I can buy. I want to buy shoes like so, maybe suede shoes. Show me suede shoes." So they have to be manufactured, but the manufacturing process is a process. So if you evoke it, there's a cost already in doing that. You know, there's a whole thing. I mean, but you're saying, "Show me the shoe first, then I buy it." That's what this is introducing. So it's not like they're saying, "Go and use AI and come and show me your AI product," and then I'll say, "Yes, this is AI enough for me." They're not saying that. They're just saying, "Show me something." Now you might say, "No, I'll not do it because of the amount of work." You say, "Okay." They go to someone else, because when they're talking to you, they're talking to someone else. So they ask someone else, "Can you do it? Show us something." Now that person will show them something. They say, "Oh, okay, that's what you want to do. Yes, we'll give you the work." All that person did was use the new technologies to achieve what he did, or what the company did. And that's all. So I'm saying, let's embrace the new technologies. So that when we're asked to do things in real time, we're doing things in real time. When we're asked to make revisions, we're doing those revisions also in real time. When we're asked to achieve a certain quality level, and our clients is like this. They'll go and watch a Disney movie or a Pixar movie, and they'll watch a scene that they really like. They'll come and play it for you now. See this? Say, "Yeah, this is what I like." So that's how they're defining quality. They're defining quality by that Pixar scene that they saw somewhere. So achieve it. You see, when they're saying all these things, you want to achieve them to a certain level so that they feel that the quality of giving them is the one that they expect. Everything in front of the clients that they look at is influencing their expectation. And then that comes back to us. So I'm just telling you so you know. And it's a way of thinking that we need to change. Now, I think it's harder for people like myself who've been on the old system for so long. In fact, this is the third time things are changing actually. Because animation never used to be done on software up until 1990. Then it shifted to software. We shifted onto software in 1993. But in the Disney itself shifted in 1993. The Lion King was the first fully done production on software. But the last 7 minutes of The Little Mermaid was the first time Disney tinkered around with animation, with software in animation. And Disney is not on the cutting edge because they're too big to be on the cutting edge. I mean, for them to introduce software meant they had to train thousands of artists on how to animate using software. So they couldn't shift it easily. They had to change the working bench of thousands of artists in order for them to now be on the same level of software that they needed them to be. So it took them time. Smaller studios shift very quickly because they don't have to do such a big investment to change. Like now, shifting to this AI type pipeline, I think Disney will change, but they'll be the slowest because they're the biggest. You see. So we need to, I think it's an opportunity for us, but we'll discuss it as we go. So there's so many things, and this is the other thing, that for the first time in, I think, I've been in this for 34 years now, but for the first time in the 34 years, things are moving at the speed almost of thought. In other words, things are changing almost at the speed of thought. Very soon, things will change at the speed of thought. Right now, so they've been predicting that artificial general intelligence will be upon us by the year 2050. That's been, all these pundits, all these guys who are the experts on AI and they're really reporting on it as experts, have been predicting 2050. Then they revised that last year. They said, no, it's going to come sooner, like 2030. And then this year started, and Elon Musk said AGI will be with us in March. So AGI is the next level AI. Right now we have ANI, which is artificial narrow intelligence. But then that's shifting to artificial general intelligence. That, according to Elon Musk, will be in March. That's when all the experimentation will start with AGI. ASI, which is the mother of it, the mother of artificial intelligence, artificial super intelligence. AGI is artificial general intelligence. ASI will be with us, according to what they're saying now, in the year 2027. ASI was predicted to be with us by the year 2080, like that, way off, because we don't have the energy consumption to run it. Even now, we don't have the energy consumption to run it. But they're saying by the year 2027, we'll have that capability, energy-wise, or energy production. I said consumption, no, production. So, ASI, artificial super intelligence is the ultimate implementation of AI that we can imagine right now. You see, and that will be with us in 2 years. So I'm saying, best thing we can do as Africans is be ahead of that curve, because if we're not, then the way the human being is, we talk about AI taking us over. It's not AI which will take us over. It's human beings that will use AI to take us over. As Africans, we've got to not be on the wrong end of that. If ASI or AGI is going to be the new big thing or the new big weapon, then let us not be on the wrong end of that weapon, like we were with, let's say, even COVID, if you like. Let's be on the right end of it. That's number one. But as a individual, let's say even as a company, let's be on the right end of that wave so that we're riding the wave as opposed to trying to swim, when the wave is drowning. Let's not do that. That's what I'm saying. So then the question is how? When things are changing at the speed of thought. When I say changing, I mean whatever plan we have right now will change by, let's just say by next week. It'll have changed. Or change significantly enough for us to consider the change. You see, it has never been like that. It's now like that. So we have to be very flexible, very adaptable, and I was talking about this last week. Okay, so that's the thing. So that, in terms of thinking, I just need you to be in that space, to think in this new way. Because it makes sense, because it gives us orientation, we need to start from what we know to move to what we don't know. It just makes sense. That's all I can say. That let's start from what we know and move to a position of what we don't know. So what we know, and I'm now speaking to the project, what we know is that production is pipeline. It has its stages, its phases, and then each, let's say, phase which has stages has, you can say, deliverables. And each deliverable has its procedures. So we can break down what we do into that. We can start from there. All I can say is that with those steps and procedures and stages and phases, we need to be very flexible. So we need to work with that in mind. That's one. That I don't think should change. I mean, unless we have a reason to change it. But let's just say that we can start with that. What we put into those stages, phases, steps, we can predetermine. We can agree on that. That's number one. Number two is that the human being is competing. We're always competing for resources, because resources are limited. So when we go to get a job, we're tendering, or we're competing with other people going to that job. And the money is going to go to the company that people feel can do this work. So we're always competing. Now, when you compete, you have to have something. In other words, you have to have a unique selling point. So we need to answer the question, what's our unique selling point? That I don't think changes. And even if it does, it's worth working from what we know. That what we need to be able to answer the question, what is our unique selling point? So that when we're pitching, that is the thing we're pitching against. Okay? So that. And then there may be other things, but these are the two things that come to my mind right now. All right? Now, I just want to mention then on these two things that we're all trained on process-driven production using software. The switch that I think we should now make is how can we run the production pipeline or produce something using agentic agents and software. So we have both. So why are we keeping the software? Because that's just where we're coming from. Why are we having oversight of the agentic agents? Because that's where we're going to. So it's a kind of blended hybrid approach. Now as we progress, we will see how much of the software we can abandon and how much of what is new we can adopt. And if we end up with this hybrid, it's fine. If it's more biased on one side and less on the other, that's okay. It just will fall where it lies. Okay, so that I hope is clear. The second thing is to do with the unique selling point. The unique selling point that I think we should have is, first, just for context, understand that we're not competing ever against some Kenyan Nairobi company. We're never competing against them. We're competing against the world. Our client has no problem going to India, Japan, Korea, America even, or Europe, and commissioning the work. They have no problem doing that. There's no cost involved really to them. So, and then they have access to those markets. They have no problem doing that. So we're not competing like we used to in the past with our next door neighbors here. We're not doing that. There's no geographic limitation. We're competing with the world. So when we talk of unique selling point, it's not like a unique selling point against our neighbor, some Kenyan company or even African company. No. We have to have a unique selling point when we compare ourselves to the Europeans or the Japanese or the Chinese. We have to have that. Our unique selling point, I think, which is cultural. It's cultural because the Europeans and the Chinese do not work the way this way. If we can tell stories by drawing from the diverse talents within our communities, we can outcompete from a story point of view the Europeans and also the Chinese. That we can do. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is, when we tell a story, let's not be Hollywood about it. Let's not even be Bollywood about it. Let's be Kenyan about it. That's what I mean. So someone may say, okay, that sounds very easy. Yeah, it is. In theory, it's a simple idea actually. It's not a difficult idea to understand. But to implement it is complicated, technical. Why? Because the storytellers, the Kenyan storytellers, are Kenyans themselves. And we have to bring them to the production table so that they can tell their story. The story is told in the acting. It's told in the sequencing of events. In the old system, the animator was the actor, actually. The animator interpreted somebody else's acting and then brought it to the story, to the table. But what I'm telling you now, with the new technologies, is that how can we not do that? The animator need not be a middleman. How can we bring the actor directly into the pipeline so that their acting, their humor, their comedy is now being demonstrated within the story? And it's influencing the script. It's influencing even we could say, the way the story is being understood. You see. Now, if we achieve that, by the way, then the Europeans, on a Kenyan narrative, would step out of it. The Americans would step out of it. The Chinese would step out, because the story is too Kenyanized for them, you see. You have like in the last production, the NRT thing, we were working with 60 actors. So even this one, it'll be the same, maybe even more because we have so many episodes. So we'll be acting maybe with 120 actors, just that alone. Imagine 120 actors, talented Kenyans, telling Kenyan stories, coming into the pipeline and speaking and acting, not just talking, but visualizing their drama. You see. Now, if that happens on our pipeline, we have a unique selling point straight away. And it's nothing to do so much with our own talents. It's just that the model we're using as it is allowing for us to tell stories and narratives that have not been told, because we're bringing the Kenyans into the pipeline. You see. That gives us a unique selling point straight away in a world stage. Now, some people say, oh, why you're Kenyanizing so much, what's the value of Kenya? Well, we could argue then, that's a good discussion, say that Kenyan stories are interesting. Kenyan stories are funny. Kenyan stories have never been told. If you hear Kenyan stories, you'll say, hey, nobody has ever said that. That can't be true. It'll be interesting enough to stop people in their tracks. You see, that's what we're saying. But it's a discussion we can have. But the most important thing is we brought a new narrative to the table, and it's fully animated. So this is what I'm saying. So, and that's just the essence of it. But there are very many nuances. Now, how to achieve it is why I'm having these meetings. I think we need to plan. One of the concessions I'm making is this. The way I've always worked is that whenever we have a job, I do all the ideation work, I do all the pre-production work, and then I bring on people in production. That was possible using software, and I used the same templates, the same methodology throughout. Nothing was changing fundamentally. Nothing. I mean, it was complicated, but it was not changing fundamentally. So I could keep doing that. Now things are changing on a weekly basis, and it's impossible for me to maintain a production line when things are changing so rapidly, and then be flexible enough and adaptable enough to the change, and still produce, let's say, an idea in a meaningful time. And even for pre-production work, produce that pre-production work in a meaningful time. I could not be so flexible and so adaptive if I'm to achieve that. So what I would like is for us to do it as a group, to work in a participatory way. And what I would like is, and that's why I'm creating these groups. This is a production group now, but it's for planning. And I'd like us to plan together and we work together. I've just put you together randomly. But I think you can work. That's why I put you here. I've chosen you because I think you can all work and bring unique insights. But you need to work in the way that we will discuss in these meetings, in these planning meetings, so that we now produce what I would call a guide to the production, or a guide to the pre-production, or a guide to the ideation. So there are several stages. So we have the ideation stage, the pre-production stage, the production stage, the post-production stage, and then, yeah, those stages. Those are the 4 stages. And we need to plan for every one of those stages. And the plan before, I mean, you'd see me coming to the meeting, for example, with a guide on how we're going to do character design, or how we're going to go about storyboarding, or how we're going to go about the animatic. You say I'd produce a plan like that. But now, because of what I'm saying, we have to incorporate the new way of doing things. That plan is no longer so rigid. It's very flexible in the sense that it adopts the new tools in the market. It also adopts a new model and a new way of doing things. And why it matters is what I said earlier, that it impacts on time, quality, and content. And that's our real estate. Time, quality, content is our real estate. So it impacts on those things. If we do not adopt those new things, if we're not flexible and adaptable, then we'll lose out on time. We'll be too slow. Our quality will be down, too low. And it's not just resolution. It's story quality. It's content quality. Will be too low. And number 3 is the issue of let's just say resources, but the biggest resource here is cost. It will be too expensive. So we'll factor ourselves out. Now, many people, I'll tell you upfront, are going to be factored out, because you have to think this through and you have to work it out and say, okay, what's my new game? How am I going to play? Many people are going to close, but there will be very many more new players in the market. So how can we maintain a front runner position? We have to think it. Okay. So what I'd like us to do then is to use these meetings to plan for the 4 different phases of the work. Now, the ideation has been done because clients have approved it. So we don't have a challenge on the ideation. What was the ideation about? The deliverables on the ideation was the story synopsis. So the client gave us a brief, then we produced a synopsis. And I want to share my screen now, so I can just go through these with you. This meeting, I need to go through the stuff I shared with you on the group wall. So I'll just share my entire screen. And if you have questions, feel free to interrupt. I just need us to have flexible communication. It has to be open, and we need to be accommodating. So I need to accommodate everybody's ideas in as much as I would also be sharing my ideas. Yeah, Nicholas, go ahead.
Yeah, just as you move in, as we move into the next stage, so just as we're on the topic of AI,
Yeah.
the AI we're willing to incorporate, is it only the open source, or is the client open to us also being able to pay and sort of use AI that we can use?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a good question. So we'll be discussing it in detail when we come to costing, but because you've asked it now, let me answer it now. First of all, the clients, and all clients are like this, never prescribe AI. They never prescribe AI. It's almost like if you go to the doctor, you will never tell the doctor use AI, but it's also disrupting medicine. You'll never tell them that, give me treatments, but you must use AI. You'll never say that. But you will say something that will put the doctor in a situation where they have to use a new technology. And the new technology, it's a cocktail of things which includes AI. So the client isn't saying that. What they're saying is that we've come up with a cost, we've given it to them. They've asked other people to cost, and they've also given costs. The clients come back to us and said, why is yours expensive? That's all they're saying. Can you lower it? That's all they're saying. You see? So I would ask myself, so how is it expensive? This is the marketplace. But the market's changing. So what is the new marketplace? And should we go low, like he said? Because the client's also educated. Remember, the client's very well educated. If you say that the product we're giving you costs more than the product other people give you because this is what it costs, they would now want to be persuaded that it is because you're giving us A, B, C, which is making this thing more expensive. That's how the client wants us to talk to them. And when they see that, they can do a comparative analysis and see that, yeah, A, B, C is missing on the other costs. And that's why those costs are low. You see, that's how. So, it's just to tell you, they won't not tell us to use AI. One of the things AI is doing is it's reducing the use of resources. When you reduce the use of money, for example, one of the biggest resources is time, and time is directly tied to money. If you spend more time on something, it costs more. So if you reduce the time, like you have the time, you have the cost. Just that, because the labor is there and you're having the labor. AI is dramatically affecting time. The things which would ordinarily take us 3 weeks is taking us, in some cases, 3 hours with AI. That's a major disruption, of course. So if people are using it, there's a lot of wiggle room. They can lower their costs fantastically for the time. So we have to now adopt it in a way that can lower costs. But why I like your question is because it's one of the things I'm giving you at home, that when we go in, it's one of the indicators. How are you reducing costs by incorporating AI in this particular activity? So we're going to have activities that I'll give you to do towards now the first milestone. And we'll discuss the milestones. And then, if you want to use AI, you have to address the cost question, you can say quality question, and of course, the content question. So, and we'll go into detail so that you know what you have to do in order to deliver on that. Okay, so that is the thing. So even as we're doing all this, we're saying from a production perspective, we have to work as a team, because I mentioned in one example that we have to bring access to the pipeline. Actors are just not animals. They're actors. So even amongst ourselves, we all have different specializations. We have to work together as a team. So how will we do that? Because you see, in the old system, it was interesting, but you could be handling a character, someone else handling another character, and then we composite them. But those are 3 different jobs. Character 1, character 2, compositing. Those are 3 different jobs. But now, with AI, how does that translate? We have to discuss. So all those things. But the client is not saying anything. I would tell you, because the client's interested in producing this thing within a time frame, within a certain budget, and at the same time at a certain quality level. They measure quality by the impact. In this case, if we are able to create or educate Generation Z, and we're also able to transform Generation Z in a way that they know about littering and they stop littering, then we'll have, according to the client, hit the target. That's what they're interested in. So how we achieve it, they're not so concerned. We're just saying we're going to achieve it using a transmedia production, which we need to discuss. So we have to go. I would tell you that if we're going to keep costs down, then we should have a healthy balance between open source software or processes and closed source or proprietary software. It has to be a healthy balance. But why do I say that? Because you could say that why not eliminate closed proprietary because it costs money. We can't. If we want to remain on the cutting edge, then we have to incorporate some proprietary software. It's just that we have to decide which one it is to remain on the cutting edge. And we have to decide where can we afford to use open source, and then we go with that. Okay? But it cannot be that everything is proprietary. If everything is proprietary, it will be not competitive as far as costing is concerned, because our software will be too expensive. If you see what's going on, and you're going to see, the moment you start now this work I'll give you to do before next week, because I want us to meet people, and then when you do this work that you have to do, you realize that AI things change every week, because no one really knows exactly what they do. Someone will come in and it's free, what they're offering is completely open source. Next week, it's no longer open source. The week after that, it is on a freemium model. It's free to a point. And then you come another week, and you find, hey, this thing costs money, there's nothing free there. So you see, things are changing so rapidly. So if you were very dependent on that pipeline, it suddenly changes to becoming totally paid for. You're locked in. So how can we get ourselves, because we can't lock in our clients. We can't be in production and suddenly we go to our clients and say we need more money. This budget no longer applies. We can't do that. If we did that, the client will rightfully terminate, because they can't. This is a trust of people, and you can't go back and start setting up. They don't augur badly for us, so I don't want to go in that direction. So what we have to do is to have a healthy mix of open source and closed source. What a healthy mix would look like, I don't know. I don't know. If you ask me, what I would prefer would be something like 80-20. If we had 80% open source and 20% closed source, I recognize we need some closed source. I think that would be nice, but I can't say that that's the mix we need. In terms of the reality on the ground. We have to go to the ground, investigate it, and then come out with the exact ratio. Okay? And we have to do it step by step. Now, the number of steps in an animation pipeline that we're talking about, there are about 36 steps. About 36. I mean, it's 30 to 36. Ordinarily, we're talking of 30. But now with AI, because AI has come in, it's shortening things, it's doing some things real quick. We can add on these other 6, which we never did before. Like, for example, when we completed our productions, we never run focus group tests. Now we can, and we need to run 2. Just that alone, which means there'll be a first cut, second cut, third cut, before the client says, okay, this is what we can make. You see? The client is measuring the impact. So when we do these focus group tests, it's the impact that we're measuring. Clients will be very heavily involved in that, and they will now either tell us this is good, or it's not good, or we can agree on what can be done next time. So that's the kind of thing. I see Alfan has dropped off, but he's traveling, he says, so he might be dropping in and out. Okay, so those are the things that so cost is an issue, but let's look for a healthy balance between the two. So every time you come, don't just come with closed source software, also come with some open source if you can find. Sometimes you can't find it, but if you can, great. So let's work like that. That's the thinking. So I think the question is valid and it will come up. I want to share my screen now and take you through. So what we're left with is about 20 more minutes of discussion, just to give you a time. We're going to look at the strategic planning, and we're looking at the scope, the audience, the content, and the platform strategy. Now, I've sent you some links ahead of time. I'm using, what I'm showing you here is using those links, is going to explain those links. The scope, the audience, the content, and the platform strategy. And this is all production. So we're looking at the workflow and management. So I'm going to talk about the pipeline, about scheduling. Scheduling is just the time, like what are the deliverables and when are the milestones for those deliverables. Those are very important because the milestones that I'm putting on the schedule are the ones that we're sharing with the client. Okay, but we'll have other milestones as well, but they're important milestones which are being shared with the client. What are your roles? Each one of us has a role. Now, by virtue of being in this planning process, you have a planning role. But you can extend your role to production, post-production. You can have extended roles. Okay? Everything is tied also to your earnings. I mean, if you're doing more work, you get more money. That's how this thing works. And then asset management. So how do we manage the assets? You see, AI has a lot of controversy and ethical issues, but they all revolve around asset management, the ethics of AI. But we'll get into it in more detail. So resource and cost planning. So the question you raised was on that, resource and cost planning. So we'll discuss cost allocations and copyright considerations. This is a big issue in the AI space, copyright consideration. It was never there before because we were creating stuff from scratch. We had the time to do it. But now we're working with existing libraries. So to a certain extent, we have to know about the copyright considerations if we're going to use libraries. And then we have quality assurance and review. So QA process and risk management. So the QA or quality process is affecting the content and the story. But story is king in this case. So the story quality we have to address. Every time you come with something, you'll find that this story quality issue will be discussed. And then of course content quality. But content quality is fairly straightforward because quality on content speaks to, let's say, things like resolution, movement, which is animation quality, things like color quality, consistency of color, consistency of movement, and things like those. That's a quality. Those are all quality questions. And then risk mitigation. So risk mitigation, the example I gave where someone is charging you, first of all, something is open source, then it becomes, freemium, then it becomes, there's no freemium plan, now you have to pay something, then that's something you have to pay, goes up in price. You see, that's a risk. You're on a pathway that is very risky because you could end up now not having access to that based on your costing to that service. So we have to, and there are many risk issues, so we always have to discuss it when we go through that. Marketing and distribution. Now this is the whole thing. The client is, you see, it's called marketing and distribution, but really it is about testing. Testing is the marketing. When we go to the market, we're literally testing with random users. First we test with selected users, then we test with random users. The client is not king. King is the user. So when the client sees that the user is responding, then we're making it. So the marketing is now part of the production in the sense that we are going to the market to sample the response of a group of users. And that group is something that should be convincing to the client for them to fund the next episode. So that is the thing. And then finally, we look at collaboration and communication. This is really a discussion on how we're coordinating things. And I just want to speak to this to start, and then we'll finish off with it. But the basic approach is that we are the planning committee, and it means that when we have pre-production going on, we'll bring on pre-production players. There'll be people in pre-production. We will be giving them the plan. We have made the plan here in our committee. We will give them the plan when we call them. When we go to production, we'll be giving them the plan when we call them. When we go to post-production, we'll be giving them the plan when they come. So we are the planning committee, and we decide on the resources, like the softwares we're using, the, let me say, agenic agents that we're using, the AI that we're using. We decide on the timelines, we decide on the issues that control the pipeline. We decide on those things. We even decide what's in the pipeline by way of benchmarks, milestones. We decide on that. Okay, so we have to distinguish ourselves from the groups that are in pre-production, production, and post-production. Now, it may turn out that all of us also have roles in those groups, but it doesn't mean we're not in the planning committee, we're still here. Okay? If you understand that, then you understand the basic structure of this project. So let me get into it then. Strategic planning, of course. Definition, defining the vision, the audience, and the content approach. So for this, let me go to the first item here on, I had it on WhatsApp, let me see. One second. Okay. I had it here. See, I want to use this as a guide because you have this. So this group, let me go to this. Yeah. You see this overview. Let me open it. This one has been approved by the client and it's part of the ideation. When we talk of scope, the client brief is here. This is the client brief. Now you can read this, the client has read it, they've approved it. So what the client's brief is saying is what I mentioned, the summary of this, is that we need to, it's a long story, but we need to target Generation Z because we felt it's good to work with Generation Z and educate them on waste disposal, the downside of it. Okay? Then we educate them on the upside. And then we make them activists for, you can say, reducing waste or littering within our neighborhoods. Okay, so that's the brief. And they're going to test us at the end on exactly that. So that's what this is saying. Now, we discussed, so they're saying, yeah, you can use animation to do that. You can also use social media, and you can also use a website. Okay? They all have different advantages. So all three platforms are in play. Animation would be distributed on YouTube, for example, but YouTube-like platforms, digital media. And then you find the website in itself is a platform. So that's where we put the comic. And then we'll have a social media strategy where we create these challenges and evoke, people within social media to take part in these challenges to continue telling the story. Now, I just want to say this: in a true integrated transmedia project, you cannot understand the full story unless you're on all these platforms. In other words, there are mysteries and drama within each one of those platforms in the story, and there's information that you would not have unless you go to social media and you go to the website and you go to YouTube to watch and to see and interact. That's a true transmedia project. It's not like you can watch all the YouTube videos or episodes and you understand the full story. You'll have left out what's on the website, which is the comic, and you'll have left out what's in social media, which is the interactive challenge. So the question then becomes to us, how do we tell this narrative in such a way that there's information scattered in all these areas? Which means people who are truly fans of this, who are following everything, have a deep understanding of the story. That's how a transmedia story is written. It's not written in a way that you make things redundant. For example, redundancies where you tell the story in episode 1 on YouTube. You go to the comic, you see the same story, but it's in a comic form. And then you go to social media and you see the same story, but it's in memes. You see, that's redundancy. And it's not interesting to see redundancy. I mean, when someone gets what you're doing, you're just repeating it, then they'll know. The incentive or motivation to go to these different platforms is low. But if the story continues when they go onto the website and continues when they go onto social media in a non-linear way, I'm not talking of the old-fashioned linear way of doing things. The story continues in some way. So whenever you go there, you just get a different dimension, a different perspective of the story, and your understanding is deepened. The drama is unfolding even more. Then it validates those platforms. That's a transmedia project. So we have to think like that. So I won't belabor it in that way, but that's what we're doing. Okay, so we come here now to the overall project strategy. This was approved before AI became a thing. If I was to rewrite this, I would include some of the benefits of AI. I don't talk to the client about AI. I don't. I just talk to them about the benefits of AI in terms of the outcome. But I don't mention AI because they're not so interested in it. They just want to see things are really on the cutting edge and things are working. And that's what they want to see. Okay, then we come to expected outcomes, so we can go through this. I've explained the outcomes, by the way, because we'll be measured on these expected outcomes. But we'll just proceed. The scope is here. You can read that. Now, it's a three-way scope is what I want to tell you. It's not just animated shorts, these episodes, 13 minutes. It's also the online comics and also this user-driven stories on social media. The outcome is three ways, or the scope is three ways. The approach is now what we've discussed. And here's the project title: A Journey to a Cleaner Tomorrow. Not better tomorrow, a cleaner tomorrow. I'll correct that. The brand is EcoTales. Actually, this has to be adopted by the client, and they have yet to adopt it, so I don't know, but we'll work with that for now. The format is this fully animated mini-series. Yeah. Fully animated mini-series, 2D animation. That can change, but it was just part of the proposal. Advocacy publication. Advocacy publication simply means a comic that is introducing the contentious issues around the subject, the thematic area. The contentious issues is that waste disposals is destroying our livelihoods. That's what's, you could say, contentious. It's like saying climate change will destroy the world of the planet. It's contentious. Okay, so those are the advocacy issues. But anyway, we'll discuss. And then we come to the meme, social media memes. In that case, we're talking about the interactive stories that we'll tell using social media challenges because they're interactive. I mean, that was what we discussed, the challenges, but we can see how to go about it. Yeah, so educational and inspirational growth. So yeah, so this breaks down the episodes and gives you some direction. This is only direction. It's a proposal, so it's up to us how we do it. Okay, going back to the slide here. This, what I've showed you, is the project scope and definition. It has the vision statement and the objectives. It has the target audience analysis. Essentially, we're talking of Generation Z. Generation Z starts from 13-year-olds to 29-year-olds. That's the generation of target. Okay? And they have similarities, but they're also diverse. But they have similarities that distinguish them from other generations. We need to produce persona profiles on them, but we'll get into that. The strategy content development is content roadmap. We need that. Now, when I say content, I'm talking about animation, comic, and you can say interactive content. We're talking of storytelling framework. This storytelling framework is both linear, because the animation is linear, non-linear, because the comic and social media are non-linear. Okay, so we have both going on within the framework. And then the platform-specific planning, which means we have to have a plan for YouTube, for example, and YouTube-like platforms. We have to have a plan for the website itself, and then we have to have a plan for social media. And then content adaptation plan. Okay? Now, content adaptation is what I was trying to say about transmedia stories, is that you have to make them integrated in order to hold the attention of serious followers, rather than making the stories, you can say, standalone and separate. That could be a strategy, but it makes more sense to integrate them because one motivates the other. If you liked what was on YouTube, you'd have be curious to learn more by going to the website, and even more curious to go online to social media to interact to get more information. And then if we create a feedback loop, then the information that comes from both the website and the social media can feed back into episode 2. And that means the audience is influencing the story itself. That feedback loop would, again, be of interest to people who are following. So that there's layers of complexity that are coming into the production because of AI, because it makes certain things quick so we can put our attention on other things. The next thing is then the workflow and management. And this is again a planning issue. So the structure and the process for efficient execution. The reason why I have this planning committee is so that when people come, like the production or pre-production process, it should just take a month. When people come for production, it should just take a month. And when people come for post, it should just take a month. That kind of thing should be possible because we are together. Let's move then into this. We look at the workflow and pipeline design. We have to design this. Okay, so I'll share information after this meeting on the workflow that I'm proposing and the pipeline design. Everything I share for you is not cast in stone. You can alter it. You just counter-propose and say, let's do it this other way, and make your argument. Because we have to be flexible if we're going to make it work. So workflow diagram, I'll give that, and production pipeline document, I'll give that. Timeline and milestone scheduling. So I'll also give you a schedule so that when I say it takes 1 month for the pre-production phase, I'll break it into stages. And I'll break those stages into milestone events. And then each milestone event will have a series of, you can say, procedures that lead up to it. I'll give you that in a Gantt chart and also production calendar. I'll send that to you just so that you have it. It'll be online. Team roles. Now, this is key, and this is why we're here. I had explained that in the planning stage, you're all part of the planning, right? So you weigh in on deciding on resources, deciding on times, deciding on procedures. You're weighing in on all that. Once we go to the pre-production team, we will be telling them these are the roles, these are the schedules we're working with, the softwares we're working with. We'll be telling them that, and then we will train them to use the softwares according to how we have seen we're using them. Okay, so we'll be going to them with a plan. That's how it's going to work. Now they may also give us feedback and say let's do things different. That's okay because we're being adaptable as well. But it has to have a clarity on who is planning and who is, let's say, responsible for pre-production outcomes. Pre-production is a content developing exercise. So they'll be developing content according to the plan we give them. So we'll produce an organizational chart and a role description document, which we have our roles, but we're talking about the roles of the people in pre-production and the people in production and the people in post-production. I'll give a template for this, and then we'll discuss it. We'll discuss these 3 items next week: the workflow and pipeline design, the timeline and milestone schedule, and the role, let's say the organizational chart and the role description document. I'll share these. I'll share them early, like by end of tomorrow, and then you will go through them so that we can discuss them next week. Okay? You may have ideas, and I want to welcome that. This is the 4th one. This asset management document. I'll share an asset inventory and documentation guidelines. Now, what do we mean by asset inventory? So, you see, when we create content, all that content we're creating, those are assets. Characters are assets. Backgrounds are assets. Even a storyboard or even an animatic or pre-visualizing, those are assets. And they all, you see, we have 3 acts making up the story. So, those are assets. So, we need to have a checklist of those assets. Okay? And we need to break them down into their constituent parts so that we are clear on what's complete and what's not done. And that's for monitoring the pre-production, production, and post-production work. Okay? So we'll be giving examples as well. Let's look at the resource and cost planning. This is the question Nicholas was raising. It was on financial, it had a financial component, and we need to manage that. And there are also legal aspects which we need to look at. So, resource allocation and budgeting. In fact, this word should be costing for us. Resource allocation and costing. I'll do a budget breakdown. This is not a budget, it's a cost breakdown I'll do. And then I'll do a resource allocation list or sheet. Now, what do I mean by this? You see, for example, you might come up with a good AI tool, let's say for character design, and you feel this is a good one to use, and you make all the good arguments. And we say, okay, let's do it. But in order for us to start using it, it's free. But to really use it for achieving what we want to achieve, there's money involved. Okay? So that's what I mean by cost breakdown. If we're going to use it and we say it's fine because the client's paying for these things, then we need to agree on the money involved. Depending on the plan, you might find if we're in pre-production, we're planning for pre-production. So if character design in pre-production involves 3 people, then we have to have 3 licenses, 1 for each of those people. You see, that's a cost issue. And we have to have oversight of all the costs broken down that way. Resource sheet allocation is looking at resources. Like if we're saying we're going to use some online AI tool for producing what we need to produce, we need to develop a list of all of them. Some will be open source, some will be on a freemium model, so we can use the free one to a certain point, and if that works, it's fine. But some will need us to go deeper, so we have to go beyond what is free. Okay? So we need to have a comprehensive list of this. Right? Now, by next week, we'll not have a full list, not by next week, but in about 2 weeks' time, we should. Let's say 3 weeks for sure. The legal and copyright considerations we have to think about. Going into AI space is new in the sense that we have to now work with content that is legally not ours in some ways. And in some ways, we need to think about where are we overstepping our bounds. Because if we're not drawing something from your head, then you're having to consider what you're doing because you're taking something and altering. Are you allowed to? These considerations are the ones I'm talking about. Because this goes into the public domain, and once it's in the public domain, if it's seen, it can lead to a suit to the client. Client wants us to show them that we're taking this into account and we're taking it seriously. They want to see that. Otherwise, they're wasi-wasi about getting into anything like that. When we talk like this, they'll be very nervous. But the question will be raised. They've not yet raised it, but they will raise it. How are we dealing with license agreements? How are we handling copyright issues? Quality assurance. Now, quality and review. I'd mentioned quality is about content, and it's the content quality we're talking about and the story. It's those two things that we look at when we talk about quality. Now, we're in animation, and the main thing about quality in animation is consistency of characters. That is the main thing. That a character should, first of all, a main character should pass the silhouette test. The silhouette test means that if you took the character and made a silhouette out of that, we'd still know that's the character. Okay? The audience will know. That's one. Two, that character should look like themselves from all views, whether it's top view, side view, front view, perspective, three-quarter views, like that. And in any scene, whether it's a nighttime, daytime scene, that it must look like that. So consistency of character is important. Now, these AI softwares do not equally maintain consistency. So that's one of the quality issues you check when you suggest a software. That's one. Two is that, continuity is a thing. And also, AI software that's out right now is not observing the rules of continuity. If you watch carefully, you'll notice a lot of jerking going on. Like there's a character, they're moving nicely, then suddenly there's a small jerk, and the character continues to move nicely again, and then suddenly there's a small jerk. They're continuity issues, and they're not seamlessly transitioning the same character in the same scene from one jerk to another. You can get around that by editing. You can. But we need to know whether, when we're considering a software, whether it is producing an output that can be resolved in editing. You see? We can. What's nice is if we don't have that jerk, that sudden cut, like a jump cut. If we don't have that on areas where we know that the character is continuous and the character should not be shape-shifted, we know that. So if that can be observed, that's good. Other quality issues with AI is sometimes AI introduces 5 fingers, 5 toes. They can make a character look cross-eyed. So we have to be keen on those things because we can't use software that's like that. And then the issue of risk. So risk in a production pipeline is looking only at 3 things. It's looking at time. If there's a risk that the time will not, this production will exceed 3 months, we need to pay attention to that. Okay? The other thing I'd mentioned is the things of quality. If there's a risk that the quality will drop, we have to pay attention what's dropping and whether it's acceptable. And the third one is to do with what's the third one? It's resources. Yeah, the cost, particularly the money. If the cost is going to be over budget, then that's a red flag. So we have to be aware of that and keep. So that's where the question Nicholas was raising is significant. We look for a healthy balance between what's free, what's open source, and what's paid for. Now, marketing and distribution has come into our domain. It wasn't before, but now it is. Why? In the realm of testing, and it's part of the route to the market. So we're talking of market testing. I should have written this as market testing, and you could say distribution. It's really implementation of or dissemination of content. We're disseminating it on the various platforms, okay? And we're working with real audiences. It's only that we're controlling the scope. We're limiting the scope. We're not fully out, but we'll have a discussion on this, and it's really about that. It's about testing on social media platforms and testing for engagement and feedback, those two things. And it follows, you could argue, a scientific approach, but it's a highly standardized process. So I'm not worried about it. It's just that it wasn't there before. It's there now. The client will measure, they'll be interested in the results of this, and they'll decide whether they're funding the next episode if this goes well. Okay? and we should distribution strategy document. We need that, and of course a monetization framework. Um, you see, I've written it as monetization framework, but what I mean is that the project should be sustainable. The client doesn't want to fund this thing forever. They're willing to fund for a mini series, like 7 episodes. That's it. But they don't want to be funding the next season, for example. So we need to have a framework. Right now, we've told the clients that we'll do rounds of investment, like we'll look for other social impact investors. They've said that's fine. But the ideal would be if we can come up with a way in which it is generating its own income and it's self-sustaining. That would be the ideal. Then we don't have to go to a funder, a single funder to fund it. So the client's willing to help us get to that, but it's not forever. So they've said that if episode 1 is good, they'll go to episode 2. If episode 2 hits the mark, they'll go to episode 3, up to episode 7. Okay, and by then we should have worked out the monetization of it. So these are just considerations. And for us as a team, let's be very open with each other. Let's share information. Let's be, let's say, flexible, open to ideas. Because I think if we're going to succeed even in 2025 and keep busy, it will depend very much on how we work as a team together. The old way is completely out. We have to come in with a new way. One of the things that also distinguishes our own pipeline, I mean, we're talking of distinguishing our product, having a unique selling point in our product. But one of the distinguishing features in the pipeline is the way we work together. If we work together well as a team, that in itself will be a big distinguishing factor, which I think we should try to work with. Let's just look at the story. I'm clicking now on the second item here. This is the folder for the story. Now, I need you to all go through the story. Nicholas has participated, he's the story writer, he wrote the actual script, but the story comes from the client's brief. So if I look at the brief is here. I'm just showing you so that you know. It has the overall aim, this document, the objective, and the expected outcome. We've discussed them, so I won't go through it again. Then we have the synopsis. I want to talk about the synopsis. The synopsis is this. The client has their objectives, right? We are telling a story. The story is interesting, it's dramatic. The drama is just interesting to audiences, the Gen Z. It doesn't necessarily align to the objectives of the client. The synopsis is an attempt to align the drama in the story to the objectives of the client. That's what this is. And it's just a short statement, but that's all this is. An alignment between the client's interest, because they're funding it, and the drama which interests the audience, Gen Z. Then comes the narrative, which is the story. Okay? So this document has the synopsis here. And you can see the episode 1 of, by the way, the lead platform is YouTube, and it is the animation, it's the lead. But the others carry different things, so they're also equally important. But we have a lead document, we're using it just to pivot. We're calling it Struggle for Change. That is the name of this episode 1, at least at the time of this document. It's part of a limited series called Guardians of Garbage, which is 3 episodes. But episode 1 is the Struggle for Change. All this we need to memorize somehow so that we speak to what is documented. The Struggle for Change has 3 acts. The first act is Order Beneath Trash. This introduces the protagonists, young Joro, his brother Kolo, and his sister Shiro. Those are the 3 main actors. There are other significant actors, like their father. We have the antagonist, who's also a major actor, the authorities. But we call them that, not necessarily government workers or city council or anything like that, but they're there. And we also have others who will be introduced. But for this episode, it's the authorities, and there's the father who is representing resistance to change, and then you have these 3. Okay, these are the heroes or protagonists. So, Order Beneath the Trash is the discovery that was made by our heroes on how to manage waste disposal by organizing it. they made this revolutionary discovery. And this one is foundational to the entire mini-series because what it also introduces is that we learn from nature. And I think it's Joro, young and his brother. Yeah, I think it's Joro. I'm not sure, but Joro who speaks to nature. He understands when animals speak. So he understands. In this case, it was ants. Ants speak, and he understands what they're saying. He communicates with them, and he learns from them. Then he educates his brother Kolo, and they educate their sister, and it escalates like that. They educate their father, and then they educate their community, and it escalates. But there's resistance, and the resistance comes from people who profit from littering. Okay, on one hand, and then there's the old habit of littering. People are not educated well enough to know that they shouldn't be littering. You see, so there's all that comes in. But this introduces the problem, littering, the garbage heap, the garbage site, which is the whole of Nairobi in the future as a garbage dump. The protagonists are introduced, the antagonists are introduced, but here there are no antagonists here, just protagonists. The problem, and then here echoes of the ants. This echoes of the ants is a connection with nature, very important because nature has all the solutions to this entire mini-series, and these young Gen Zs are not genius, they're just connected to nature and they're understanding and learning from nature. But they look like they're genius because they're saying things that the community doesn't know. So this is all about what they learn. And then comes the shadows of the hidden truth. We introduce the antagonist and his people and the challenge culturally which needs to be changed. It's introduced here. Okay. There's still some writing going on because we also argued that each episode should be complete in itself, which means we should be able to test this episode for not only educating the public Gen Z on the problem, but also we should be able to test it for the extent to which we make them activists towards wanting to change things themselves, not wanting to litter the environment. You see, we have to test for that as well. So the second component is not really addressed in this. So there's an element of change in this or reconstruction of this story. And other things. So Nicholas is the story writer in terms of the script. This story is containing the messaging from the client as well as the drama from the script. Those two are being merged within this story. So from here comes the cast. There are 7 actors, and of course background actors exist. But these are the main actors. And the main, you can say, actors would be maybe up to here. But we've not mentioned the Transmedia project. We've not mentioned the ants. The ants have their own actors, and they are also significant. So they have not been mentioned. So this is really for the animation. But because the ants, well, they should be mentioned, I think, because they're real characters. So I think we have to extend this. Oh, here they are. Here are the ant characters. There are 3. Okay, these are main characters as well. So you see, it's an ensemble animation. An ensemble animation has more than one protagonist. It has like 6 or 7, let's say, 6 or 7 protagonists in a story, or main actors, let's say. Mr. Munga and Inspector Leon, these are antagonists, but they're significant. They're enough to be called main actors because they are the main antagonists. One is representing authorities, one would represent like tradition. Maybe the father represents tradition, you see, for example. So there's a sense of complexity in this production because we have so many main characters. Okay, so that is there, and then we have the script. Now, the idea is to go through the script. The script's not complicated, it's very straightforward, but it's a real script written in a cinematic way. So the idea is to go through it to understand the drama and how it unfolds, to understand what we're doing. If I go back now to this, number 3, here is the script. We've seen it. Now, idea boards. Let's go to the idea boards. Now, this is important, especially with AI now. We have mood boards and reference boards. AI is entering this space very properly. For example, this is the mood board for Act 1. Let me double click on this. You see here, These are the mood boards. You see, you know what a mood board is. It tries to look for scenarios and scenes that depict the kind of um, you know, treatment that we'll be using. So this is what we mean. The whole thing is set in this kind of setting. It's not like it's actually that or this, but this gives a sense of what we're talking about. And we're trying to say that Nairobi's become this. So this is the bigger picture. But when you zoom in, that's a small picture. You can see what it is. Like that. Now I'm going to send you what I've done some research on this. The game-changing mood boards that AI has introduced. AI has introduced this kind of thing. Let me show you. These are mood boards, and I just want to show you so that you can understand the kind of change that is coming with the AI. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah. Let me Google it. I seem to not have it. So let me just say. You see, these guys of ChatGPT, no, it's OpenAI. They have Zoro. Zora. Zora is their OpenAI software. I mean, not OpenAI. It's their, let's say, animation software, if you like. And I want you to see this because this is changing the way we do mood boards, and they're coming into the storyboarding process very strongly. Let me play it where you can hear it. If you can't hear anything, just let me know. But there's no voice. It's just audio. I'll put it here. And it changes the way we work. First, let me play it, then we'll restart. Okay, so what's happening is this. I'll just play it now and just go over it. Zora has that if you create a mood board like this is your image that you want, and you've probably constructed it from using different AI images, and you brought that together. You've also kind of like made everyone have a color schema. So the colors are consistent. The color grading is done. This image is representing a snapshot of the production. What Zora is saying, if that's on your mood board, on a scene, then it can extend this scene by animating it. And it does it for you automatically. So you can see the output. Yeah, so see, that output is only coming about because AI that's very powerful in many ways. On one hand, it can speed up things. If you have mood boards everywhere, I hope you all saw that, by the way. But it can speed up things so that you can move straight from mood board to treatment and then pre-visualization very quickly. I mean, all in the same day you can do that. That's how powerful it is. Secondly, is that a client can make a change to the mood board, and you can apply the change to your storyboard, animatic, previous. You can apply the change simply because you're taking that one image that they are approving and animating it in a way that you prompt Zora. Zora is already allowing you to do this with the free version, but it costs money. So if you want to use Zora in the pipeline, there are plans, and we need to look at that. So they've introduced that. Google has its own VEO2. They have not launched it, but they're threatening to launch it in the next few weeks. And when it hits the scene, it looks to be an advancement on Zora. Yeah, so that's just one example. So here, and you can Google, because I'm giving you homework to do that, we need to develop these mood boards. These were old mood boards, but they don't take into account AI. I think with AI now, we should have mood boards that really tell us what the different scenes look like. You see, each act is going to have like 3 or 4 scenes maybe. Yeah? A camera angle change can result in a new scene. So we can have mood boards for each. Now we can take them seriously because we can, if we do, we can animate them straight away, and those animations from the mood boards can be inserted into our pipeline. You see the thinking? So that's an example of the game change that I was talking about. So we have on the drive here, where's the drive? Yeah. We have mood boards for each act, and I'd like us to start filling them up. So feel free. I'm giving you some freedom to come in and add different elements based on what you discover yourselves, and add them to these files. Like I'll delete these. I don't want these ones because these ones are not actually what we're talking about now. We were talking about this 6 months ago, but no longer. Now we're going to work with mood boards that are closer to the final execution. Okay, and then we will translate them into animations. Then we will insert them into our pipeline, into our production. Okay, so I've just given you the structure here. Come and put in, based on what you see in the story, your mood boards. We will discuss them next week. Client is ready. You see, client has said, just bring me 1 minute of animation, and I will go. So we can give them the previous, or even the animatic, but we have to give them something. And then the project payment will start. The project started, but the project payment will start coming once they see that, you see. And so I'll show you how we're breaking down the payments also, but by Sunday, because I'll first of all do what I need to do by tomorrow, but by Sunday, I'll give you your payment structure so that you know how you earn based on the pipeline or the schedule that we're talking about. Okay. Then we have idea boards. Yeah, so we have also reference boards. So reference boards are different from mood boards. Reference boards are about camera angles. So if you have interesting camera angles you'd like to put into the, it's like your visual short list, if you like. But if you have interesting camera angles that you want to put into the reference board, put them there, because again we can animate those using Zora or any other AI platform. Okay, so that takes care of the first ideation set of information. But now coming into pre-production, you see, we need all these things if we're going to get a group to work on this. We need a character guide, character development guide. I'd like you to explore different AI tools for character development. Now, some of the ones I saw are products like Runway. Runway is very good for character development. But you can also use Zora. Zora it's called. There's VEO2. This is Google's. But there are others. I found this one. Let me show you this one, which I found. This one which I found is important actually, because the way it works is actually, it works in a way that I'm saying we need to work. They call it here, there's this one called artistry, which is very good. But I want to show you this one because this one speaks to character development more specifically for animation. So let me just play this one for you. Just check it out. I'll share these links. I'll give you all these things. But let's have a look at this.
Today I'll show you the cheat code to create consistent character images or even generate them in any pose you want using Leonardo AI. With this easy updated approach I'll be teaching you after receiving several requests from you guys. You can even use it to make your own storybooks, AI animations or consistent character models. I've also included some free resources in this video to help you guys out with this, so make sure you watch till the end. Let's hop on to Leonardo AI and click on Launch App. You can sign up free if you don't have an account. Now click on image generation and turn on legacy mode from up here. Let's choose a model from here. I'll go for Kino XL, but you can even go for Dream Shaper or 3D animated style. They work well. Now go ahead and describe any character you'd like. I've described an elf girl along with the name Jenny. It's a good practice to assign a name to your character. It helps maintain the style. And fill in details about the outfit and physical features. I'll provide the prompt template for this below. We'll keep alchemy turned on for the first one. The free account gives 5 alchemy uses per day. Let's set the image dimension to 9:16 and click generate. We get an amazing output here. This is going to be our base image of Jenny, which we will use to create her consistently in other scenes. Let's remove the background by clicking this button and downloading it from here. The rest is simple. We'll go to image guidance and upload the base image by clicking here and select style reference in the drop down, then turn it up to max. Now go back and we'll add an action we want Jenny to do in her house in our input. Also remove no background and click generate, and we get a beautiful output sticking to our prompt matching Jenny's base image. For the next one, let's change it to her petting a dog. I'll pick another image dimension and we can turn alchemy off now to save our credits, then generate. Pretty neat. I went on to create some more by simply changing the action to get these amazing results. But what if you want an output with a particular pose? Let's try a high kick. Well, even though the character matches the styling, we didn't get our desired pose. So let's learn to create our characters in any pose. First head to image guidance and remove this to upload a reference image in the high kick pose we want. Don't worry, I've compiled and made a collection of reference poses to save you time from having to do so yourself. Just click on the link in the description below. You can pay any fair price you'd like to support me or get it for free by entering 0 here and adding it to cart. Just enter your email address here and you can download it. So after the image upload, select type as H2Image. This feature is not free for alchemy models, so select Dream Shaper V7 and set the strength to 0.6. Now let's head back to describe a new girl sorcerer, Anna, doing a high kick. Turn alchemy off and select desired resolution, then generate. Here we get Anna matching the perfect pose. For consistency, click on these 3 dots and copy the seed number. Now we'll scroll down and paste it under advanced setting and toggle this on. Let's go back and upload another one of our poses, also adjusting the prompt, and generate again. Neat, these two seem to be pretty consistent. Let's switch to 3D animation model and test the same poses and prompts. We get really beautiful and consistent output. But even though these outputs are very close to each other, you may not get an exact match each time. Let's take it a step further for bang on consistency in any pose, matching the exact same outfit. So make sure to subscribe. I'll generate another character in a pose with Kino XL. You may use another. Once again, we'll remove the background from the image and upload it under image guidance. With our pose already uploaded in H2Image, we'll click on the image input 2 to upload another, adding multiple inputs at once. This is only available on the paid subscription. You can use my link below for a discount.
There is no sound.
Oh, there's no sound. I see. I should have known that. I just didn't pay attention to it. I thought there was some.
approach, I'll be teaching you select style reference, then turn it up to max. You can even use it to make your own story.
That means I have to play it again. Yeah, it's good that you mentioned it. I didn't realize.
Spending too much time creating a video for your needs. Introducing Video Creator, the powerful all-in-one platform.
Today,
Okay, let me now. If you ever hear this problem of sound, maybe I put it in the wrong place. Let me know in good time. But now I'll play it again. It's only 4 minutes.
I'll show you the cheat code to create consistent character images or even generate them in any pose you want using Leonardo AI. With this easy updated approach, I'll be teaching you after receiving several requests from you guys. You can even use it to make your own storybooks, AI animations, or consistent character models. I've also included some free resources in this video to help you guys out with this, so make sure you watch till the end. Let's hop on to Leonardo AI and click on Launch App. You can sign up free if you don't have an account. Now click on image generation and turn on legacy mode from up here. Let's choose a model from here.
Hello?
I'll go for Kino XL, but you can even go for Dream Shaper or 3D animated style. They work well. Now go ahead and describe any character you'd like. I've described an elf girl along with the name Jenny. It's a good practice to assign a name to your character. It helps maintain the style. And fill in details about the outfit and physical features. I'll provide the prompt template for this below. We'll keep alchemy turned on for the first one. The free account gives 5 alchemy uses per day. Let's set the image dimension to 9:16 and click generate. We get an amazing output here. This is going to be our base image of Jenny, which we will use to create her consistently in other scenes. Let's remove the background by clicking this button and downloading it from here. The rest is simple. We'll go to image guidance and upload the base image by clicking here and select style reference in the drop down, then turn it up to max. Now go back and we'll add an action we want Jenny to do in her house in our input. Also remove no background and click generate, and we get a beautiful output sticking to our prompt matching Jenny's base image. For the next one, let's change it to her petting a dog. I'll pick another image dimension.
Let me put it here for you to watch on your end. I'm not sure. Is everyone not getting sound on this? I'm using a different browser now. I'll drop this in the chat. See, very slow.
Today I'll show you the cheat code to create consistent character images or even generate them in any pose you want using Leonardo AI. With this easy
Did you hear sound on that? Have you heard anything? Have you heard anything?
No.
updated approach I'll be teaching you after receiving several requests from you guys. You can even use it to make your own storybooks, AI animations, or consistent character models. I've also included some free resources in this video to help you guys out with this, so make sure you watch till the end. Let's hop on to Leonardo AI and click on Launch App. You can sign up free if you don't have an account. Now click on image generation and turn on legacy mode from up here. Let's choose a model from here. I'll go for Kino XL, but you can even go for Dream Shaper or 3D animated style. They work well. Now go ahead and describe any character you'd like. I've described an elf girl along with the name Jenny. It's a good practice to assign a name to your character. It helps maintain the style. And fill in details about the outfit and physical features. I'll provide the prompt template for this below. We'll keep alchemy turned on for the first one. The free account gives 5 alchemy uses per day. Let's set the image dimension to 9:16 and click generate. We get an amazing output here. This is going to be our base image of Jenny, which we will use to create her consistently in other scenes. Let's remove the background by clicking this button and downloading it from here. The rest is simple. We'll go to image guidance and upload the base image by clicking here and select style reference in the drop down, then turn it up to max. Now go back and we'll add an action we want Jenny to do in her house in our input. Also remove no background and click generate. And we get a beautiful output sticking to our prompt matching Jenny's base image. For the next one, let's change it to her petting a dog. I'll pick another image dimension and we can turn alchemy off now to save our credits, then generate. Pretty neat. I went on to create some more by simply changing the action to get these amazing results. But what if you want an output with a particular pose? Let's try a high kick. Well, even though the character matches the styling, we didn't get our desired pose. So let's learn to create our characters in any pose. First head to image guidance and remove this to upload a reference image in the high kick pose we want. Don't worry, I've compiled and made a collection of reference poses to save you time from having to do so yourself. Just click on the link in the description below. You can pay any fair price you'd like to support me or get it for free by entering 0 here and adding it to cart. Just enter your email address here and you can download it. So after the image upload, select type as H to image. This feature is not free for alchemy models, so select Dream Shaper V7 and set the strength to 0.6. Now let's head back to describe a new girl sorcerer Anna doing a high kick. Turn alchemy off and select desired resolution, then generate. Here we get Anna matching the perfect pose. For consistency, click on these 3 dots and copy the seed number. Now we'll scroll down and paste it under advanced setting and toggle this on. Let's go back and upload another one of our poses, also adjusting the prompt and generate again. Neat, these two seem to be pretty consistent. Let's switch to 3D animation model and test the same poses and prompts. We get really beautiful and consistent output. But even though these outputs are very close to each other, you may not get an exact match each time. Let's take it a step further for bang on consistency in any pose, matching the exact same outfit, so make sure to subscribe. I'll generate another character in a pose with Kino XL. You may use another. Once again, we'll remove the background from the image and upload it under image guidance. With our pose already uploaded in H2 image, we'll click on the image input 2 to upload another, adding multiple inputs at once. This is only available on the paid subscription. You can use my link below for a discount. Upload the character and select style reference, then turn it up to max and you're all set. Go back to generate the image and we get a stunning result with an exact match to the base image. Let's try uploading another pose as well. I want her angry, so let's change the prompt accordingly and generate. Super cool, so make sure to have fun testing this out with multiple poses and character sheets, all of which I've provided below. And if you're interested to learn to convert these consistent images to 3D models, animations, or to make an AI influencer, you can check out these videos. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.
All right. So that's an example of a software that I would say we could put into our pipeline. Why? First of all, it addresses the issues of
If you've been punching your keyboard trying to create
I have to switch it off.
consistent character scenes with AI, don't worry, cause today I'll cover how to make
Okay. Yeah, it addresses character design. It addresses character models and character model poses. It addresses storyboard characters for storyboards. So you can produce your storyboard with that. You can produce your animatic from your storyboard with that. It also addresses, I don't know to what extent, I haven't tried it, but it may address some movement. If it gives us some movement, then we can use it for previs or pre-visualization. But by combining that with Zora, we can definitely introduce movement. Okay, because Zora introduces movement in the style that you have with it. Why I say it's professional is partly because on one hand, it it um it keeps the character consistent, which is important. Um, Continuity is an issue for animation, but the consistency of character is very important for the animation itself, the storyboarding as well, as the comic, and also for the memes we would produce. You have to have the same character. The fact that it works with poses is excellent because then it allows us the different poses we want, and it's simply mapping, the character to the pose we use as a reference. So that's the kind of software that is the AI tool we would want to improve the speed. Because in a day, you can produce your character post sheets, your character model sheets, your character, let's say, scenes. Those are your um, storyboard scenes. You can do as artworks. You can do the animatic from that. You need also audio, but you can get work that ordinarily would take 3 weeks done in a day. The very major pre-production tool. You see what I'm saying? So that's why I want us to learn how to use that. But I don't want to say it's the only one. You see, if you combine that with Zora, then you can animate the scenes that you've created. Let's say on the storyboard, you have a storyboard scene and you can animate it. Maybe you need to introduce a few extra scenes related to guide Zora, but then it can animate that by combining the three scenes into a movement that is convincing. And that becomes your previs, you see? It matches perspective. It also matches color grading. So if you have a certain color schema, it will match that. It maintains consistency of character. So those are all very, very good things. You're doing work that would take us normally 6 weeks. You're doing that in the space of 2 days. It's a monumental change. Clients will still make changes, even on the 6 weeks of work. They'll make changes. So they'll still make changes on the 2 weeks or 2 days of work. So that's the kind of thing. Now, so I'll share these links with you so that you have them. But I'm opening it out because I'm telling you the way AI is going. There are other softwares coming out even today that are doing the same thing. But people have different nuances and different emphasis and different costs or plans. So we need to see which plans work for us because we have to look at cost, which quality works because we have to look at quality. So we want to see to what extent is the quality working for us, and then which ones are you can say fitting into our pipeline in terms of what we need to get done. Okay, so the homework I want to give you is I'm going to assign a character to all of us. I'll prepare a character sheet, which I'll give you. And I'd like you to plan the journey of this character's, let's say, development. From pre-production, that's where we're starting. So ideation is done. So we'll just start from pre-production using the story that was created in ideation. And you develop that character's journey through the entire script. Now, the client's not asking for the entire episode. They're saying, even for the first tranche of payment, that we need to show something. So we can set a target. Let's just say for Act 1, plot your character's trajectory for Act 1. Now, the other characters, we don't know them, but I'd like each of us to at least take our character, do the character design, make the character post sheet for your character, and do the what I would say is by next week. If you have your character, the character post sheets, and let's say the scene treatment. Yeah, so pick a scene where your character, all the scenes where your character appears. If you look at the storyboard, there's a rough storyboard there. Let's just look at that. Let me share my screen. There's a rough storyboard in the links I gave you. Yeah. You see, if you look at character development guide, there is a guide. You can read through this guide for your character to see how to know you can work with your guide. I mean, you can also use poses you can get out of software. We have character creation software, which I've given you references to those. He's using his own character sheet, but if we find his own character sheet is limiting for some reason, we can go into one of these character creation softwares like Make Human or Fuse, and there are others. And we can use the model sheets from there. They're very easy to use, but I've given you a guide for that here. So use that to get your poses correct if you don't want to use what he's giving us. because he's also giving us something. Um, and then I've given you some tutorials as well for those. And then there's a short list here, which you can use to get scenes for treating your character, putting your character into the context so that you can show how your character would look on those scenes. Okay. Ideally, these are scenes which focus on your character. Because next week when we meet, we'll select which characters are working and we'll go ahead, we can correct them. And then with the shared characters, we can now build scenes after that. Okay. The other thing I'd like you to do is to work on the mood and reference board. So these are two things to do. One is to work on your character model sheets, your character pose sheets, and then your scenes, the treatment. We'll call it scene treatment, where your character appears. Just to give us a sense of how you're thinking. Also, work on the mood board and the reference board. And make sure wherever your character appears, you have a mood board reference and a reference board reference, so that we know. Sometimes it's an ant's eye view that you're showing the reference board. Sometimes it's a close-up, extreme close-up. Other times it's a medium shot. But just show us the kind of references for that scene that you want us to look at. Reference boards don't have your character. They don't. They're just scenes that are interesting that you show because you think these cinematically would be interesting to show. That's all. But then once you superimpose your character, you get treatment. You superimpose your reference board or your mood board with your character, those backgrounds, and suddenly you have the scene comes to life. You see, so that's what I'd like you to do. So have um, 5 things done by next week, and you can use AI tools, like I said. And when you identify AI tools that work, you can share in the group. But I'd like us to look at what you've done, and if it works, we'll consider your technology and we'll put it into the pipeline so that we all harmonize and use similar technologies for this work. And remember, we are planning committee, so we're doing a plan on what technologies and what characters need to be animated for the production team that will come. Even for the pre-production team, we have a pre-production team which is mainly sound design, mainly. But they need us to be quite specific on the characters we're working with in order for them to come in and work with us. But I'll get into sound design after next week, because next week I'd like us to finish with our characters and at least get up to pre-visualization if we can by the other week. If we get to pre-visualization, that's great, because we can then bring in the actors and do the sound design on top of that, or even before that. I think it might have to happen before that. So we bring them in, and then we do the pre-visualization, and then we have something to show our client, and the project is done with pre-production in 1 month. The month of February is our pre-production month, okay? But the plan for it is being done now. So I hope it's clear what I'm requesting. I'm requesting for 5 items: a character model sheet, a character post sheet. I'm requesting a mood board where your character appears. But I think the mood board, because we're looking at the entire production, let's do mood boards for Act 1, 2, and 3. Yeah? And you don't have to be comprehensive. Just do what you feel you can do in terms of that. If everyone does something, it will be fairly comprehensive. Okay? And use Zora for that. Unless you get something better, then use that. Zora is very good because it also has ways in which you can alter the scene to give it a cinematic feeling that might add drama to the scene. So you can use that for mood. But reference board, which is to do with perspectives and everything, and camera angles and all that, and close-ups and all this, that is backgrounds which you can use prompt engineering. You just tell the Zora, for example, what it is you want, and then see what comes out and keep talking to it until it produces what you want. Right? So try to have the reference boards and mood boards done as well. So those are the 4 items. And the 5th item is treatment, where you pick a background from your reference or mood board and put your character into it and make it somehow homogeneous, in the sense that your character is in the scene. The shadows, the lighting, the color grading, make it all look the same place, like the character is in that space. And make your character a snapshot of a scene. So they're not just out of context. there is a scene that focuses on them like this, and that becomes your treatment. Treatment is really showing how you treat your character in one scene. Okay, those are the 5 things I'd like you to produce and present on Thursday next week. If we can succeed in that, that's a massive step, because all that work takes about 3 weeks normally for professionals to do. Using AI tools, if we can do it in the space of 1 week, excellent. In fact, it should be, I think once you get the hang of it, it should be 1 day's work. That's what it looks like to me. All right? I'll stop the meeting.
I have a question.
Yes, yes. Go ahead, Jake.
From the So when we use Zora,
Yes.
should we give them? You see the characters, like the example of the characters
Yeah.
that was shown for Njoro,
Yes.
Kolo, and Shiru.
Yes.
Should we give the AI that picture, or should we just write the description of the character? Let's say, for example, how Kolo is straightforward, or more of a rough type of boy,
Yeah.
compared to Njoro, who's more tactical.
It's a good question. And the honest answer is I don't know. I haven't used the software yet. I just saw that video and I, read around it, but I've not used it. So it's a very good question. That can it work with a combination of, let's say, text to image prompting as well as image prompting, so that these two impact on the outcome? That's a very good question. Because if it can work with two, it will be beautiful. Because then we can use what we see works and also speak or type what we think works, you see, to enhance. But experiment. You experiment. I'm also going to try it out. I see Nicholas has raised his hand as well. So, Nicholas, you can speak.
Um, just based on what you were saying, I think a good strategy is to do both. So, because most of these AIs are not trained on a lot of African context. So, what I would suggest is in the prompt, describe it the way you would describe it best. Then it'll get it wrong, and then tell it that this is wrong, this is rather better, and then coach it that way. And then eventually, when you're seeing it's giving some sort of results that are close, then you can now add the picture and tell it, combine the prompt and the picture to then give a kind of final product. That's how I would suggest. But then again, yeah, experimentation is key.
Yeah, okay. So that's very good. So it looks to me like we need to experiment, as you said, and then figure out steps that work for particular softwares. And then, of course, we document that. Because remember, we're planning. So when we go to the actual doing of it, we're telling people this is what you do using this software, and this is how you go about it specifically. If you follow these steps, then it works. So it's a valid question, and I think that's also a good answer, Nicholas. So let's try it out so that next week we show our results of whatever we have. And you're right. Again, the contexts are not African. So some of these guys make claims, but you see, they have cheat sheets going on. So someone will say that we can give you this Disney look, but that's all it does. It's a forced thing. You can't get another look. That's the only look it can give you. You see, so in a way, it doesn't meet your expectation because you thought you could vary it and try different styles, but it can't. So some are like that, but they look amazing in the video. But when you actually try them out, you find that you're locked into a particular style. So the flexibility is important. I think Zora is powerful, and what Google is saying it's producing VEO2 looks to be even more amazing because of the amount of flexibility they give you. You can do almost anything, and it looks realistic. And you can also make it look cartoonish or 3D if you want. And then, of course, comes this other one, which is Runway, and the others. But like the Chinese have one, which I forget the name of it, but they have one which is very good as well, actually. So it's also in play. And they have more than one. So let's try. I'll have to document what I have. Just give you a list, a hit list by tomorrow. But you go ahead and don't be limited to what I give you. Just find out what you can find out and see if you can produce the 5 bodies of work that we're talking about with the kind of thinking that I'm talking about. It's very important. One of the things which is not so easily implemented in any of these softwares is the collaborative way of working with them. That's not clear. And that's a strength for us if we can collaborate, because we're working as a group, as a team. For example, if let's say Jake has a character, Nicholas has a character, I have a character, Alfana has a character, and they're all in one scene. How can I not only animate my character interacting, and the interaction, the movement comes from an actor, a real actor. So how can I do that with my character and also incorporate your own actions that you have done with your characters into my scene in a way that produces a composite scene? You see, none of them talk about that. But that level of collaboration is the kind of thing I think that would allow us to tell stories that we could tell about Kenya or our context that are unique. Right now, those kind of scenes are produced by experts purely, and there's very little interaction from outside the experts, and they work solo. They even work solo. So someone works on a scene themselves on a 3D software and they produce. But things are changing. So how can we then not only work with experts but work alongside lay people who are having different specializations like acting, and at the same time, how do we work together on one scene using AI? It's a challenge. But if you see a software that's doing that, then that's going in the direction we need to be going in order to give our unique selling points some traction. Okay, guys. So that's all I think I would say. But other questions, Jake or Nicholas, or even suggestions?
You didn't list all the deliverables. You said mood board, character, pose sheet, and treatment. What are the other two?
So okay, let me count them. So number one is your character design, and the character is designed on two sheets. So one is the model sheet, which has the front view, side view, and three-quarter view. So that's one. Number two is the pose sheet. Generally, you want to pick all the poses in which your character appears in the episode. So, your character can have many poses if they're a main character. So a pose sheet can have even up to 18, 20 poses, you see. So just pick the significantly different ones and then show them. So those are two. Number three would be the mood board. Now I've put a mood board for Act 1, 2, and 3, and each act has almost 3 or 4 scenes. Yeah, and a scene sometimes can just be a reverse angle of the same environment. That can be a change of scene. So you have the reverse angle and the main angle. So, but you'll see 3 or 4, sometimes even up to 6 scenes. So for each scene, um, try to come up with a mood for that scene. Now, why the mood matters is that the cinematic feeling of the scene, emotionally, dramatically, is in that mood. So, if we're trying to show garbage in a certain way with a certain look and feel that appeals to the target audience, Gen Z, try to bring out that mood in the mood board, right? So it's not just a photo; it's something that has been treated in a way that is going to, you can say, impact on Gen Z, something like that. Something that Gen Z will say, well, that's interesting, that's curious, or that's unique, or even that's scary, whatever. But something that is not going to be just a photo. You see? So that's one. And then so that's number three. Then a reference board is to do with the storytelling from the camera perspective. So you're looking at really camera angles, and yeah, so you see, we can't leave it out. I mean, sometimes you can leave it out, but other times it's worth having, because you might find ant eye views or bird eye views or close up, extreme close up. Sometimes you're inside someone's head, whatever it is. But you might think of different ways of representing a scene which are innovative. So let's think of that as well. So we have the reference board as well. So that's number 4. Suggest them. And then number 5 is the composite scene, where you take your character now that you've designed and put them in the scene with the mood, let's say, and try to work as an animator artist, where you match the color grading, the um, color schemes, the shadows, the lights, so that your character is in the scene. So those are the 5. And why that is significant is that if you have that, and then we can approve your character, the next step is to create these integrated scenes where we now create a full ensemble of each scene with all the characters, because these characters are not solo. They're not appearing alone. Many times they're appearing 2 or 3 in a scene. So now we can create the whole ensemble with the real characters we've approved, and from there we'll also animate them, because we saw how easy it is to animate using Zora. It's very easy. You just tell it to do it and it'll animate it according to what you tell it. So we can take a scene which has an ensemble and then we animate that, even if it's for 5 seconds or 10 seconds. But when we do that, we now have not only something that is a mood board, but it becomes, you can argue, composite animation that we can put together to make a pre-visualization to show our clients. Although a pre-visualization, I have not seen any lip syncing that we can work with yet, but we should find some. I found some, but not yet, which fit into our pipeline. But once we get to that, then we have almost something prescriptive for for pre-production that can inform production very specifically. This is how you lip sync. Anyway, but let's just get to the stage I've suggested. Those 5 are enough, and then next week we'll get into movement. We'll get into storyboarding, animatic, and I should say storyboarding, sound design, animatic, and then of course the other week we'll do pre-visualization. So next week will be when we get into sound design. But let's do character design now in the 5 that I've suggested. That will be very strong if we get up to treatment. So treatment is number 5. I hope I've made it clear, Jake. I don't know if it's still confusing.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
So I'll send out a list. Now, you see, there are almost 10 characters, and we're only 3. So it looks like we'll have 3 characters each, roughly. It looks like, because if there are 10, sorry, and we're 3, and I divide it, then we'll have that. But that's okay. I think the process is quick enough. So let's just see if we can get 3 characters done in the way I've suggested by next week. And then the following week, we do the sound design. Again, sound design is using AI. It's mainly using AI. I'll give you a discussion on that. And then after that, we do the final, which is the previs. And then we share that with the client. So within 3 weeks from today, the client is ready to disseminate some money. There's other things they want me to give them, like they're not so clear how this is going to work, let's say, on social media, for example. They want me, so I'll have to give them a bit of a strategy on the dissemination. But I'll share that with you in 2 weeks. And then that's what we'll share with the client so that they know how we're going to disseminate this information. Dissemination for us involves testing, all this market testing, measuring the impact, that kind of thing. Once they are convinced by that, then according to them, we're good to go. We start, and I'll give you your contracts, how they would look. I'll share that with you on Sunday. I think Sunday I said, so that you by next week or in the course of the week we can discuss it. Yeah, so that you have a sense of how the money is being shared once it's paid out. Okay. Yeah, feel free if there's anything else we need to discuss. By the way, this is all very new and also very flexible and very adaptive somehow. So I think we need to be a bit open, I think, to new ideas and new ways of working. So I'm keeping myself as open as possible, and you do the same thing. And then we'll agree on what we're doing. Once we agree, then that becomes the plan for this production at least. And then we'll keep on casting things in stone together as we progress. So, any other thing you'd like to add? Okay, if there's none, then I can end the meeting. I know it's been a long meeting. Yeah, but I hope with time it just becomes shorter and shorter.